Hey, and welcome back to Zero to Game Dev Hero. By now, we have learned how a C# program is built, how to display something in a console, and how to comment code. Sounds like a perfect foundation to learn about variables. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. We will learn about the containers of C# programming. Let's go! Containers of C# programming? Yeah, that's kind of how I would describe variables. Variables can store data and information in the C# code. To give you a better idea, I have an example for you. If we would translate variables into something from the real world, it would be containers, boxes, or bottles. For example, a bottle is a container for liquids. I can put a liquid in a bottle and use it when I need it. I can put different liquids in a bottle: water, juice, lemonade. However, it becomes difficult when I want to put something other than liquids into a bottle, such as food. This is not possible. Theoretically, it is possible, of course, but let's assume that it's not possible. Well, we don't want to put a sandwich into a bottle, just don't do it. And I can write a name on a bottle, so I know what's in it. Otter's bottle would be a nice generic name, for example. And now it doesn't really matter what's in the bottle. Even if I write water bottle on my bottle, I can still pour juice in it. It may confuse me, but it works. But it confused me. So it's important to name my bottle correctly. And that's how we get to variables. What we have just done is to describe real-world variables. In C#, variables are containers for things like text, numbers, and objects. In variables, we can store these things and then use them whenever we need them. A variable is structured as follows. It consists of a type, a name, and it contains a value. The type describes what can be in a variable and it limits what the value can be. Just like our bottle can only hold liquids. A variable can only hold a certain type of value. We will see what types there are in a moment. The name of a variable can be chosen freely, but it should describe what the variable holds. Why? Because the name is what you will use to find the variable later in your code. If you choose a name that is hard to remember and makes no sense, you will have a hard time. With the equal sign, you can tell the computer to assign a value to the variable. And the value on the far right is the content. In our example earlier, the value would have been water or juice. Here, for example, it's a number or a word. But let's look at the type again. There are many types a variable can have. For now, though, we'll just learn 4 of them. 4 that are quite useful for getting started with Unity. There is int, or integer. Int can contain a whole number, like 1, 4, 183, or -9. Then there is float. Float also contains a number, but not a whole number, but a decimal number, like 0.04, 1.1, 8.04, or -19.9999. String is a type that contains a text, for example, hello world or apple. And the 4th type I want to introduce to you is bool or boolean. Bool is special, but is used very often, because bool can only contain 2 values. A bool is either true or false. You will learn where bools are good later. In the code, it looks like this. Int is the type, so we know that this variable will contain a number. The variable has the name age, so we know later that the number is an age and not, for example, the amount of oranges we have. And the name is chosen by us, so we can decide what the best name should be. But we know that we want to store our age in this variable, so we should name it age. And the value our int variable with the name age has is 30, and so is our age, or at least my age. Wonderful. Let's go straight to our code editor and try out all that we've learned. First, let us create an integer variable in our code. It will hold our age. We write int age equals sign 30. That's it. That's all you have to do to define a variable in your C# code. If we hit run now, nothing will happen. Why? Because we haven't told the program to display the variable. To do that, we need to use the statement that we have learned in the last tutorial. We write console.writeLine brackets, and inside the brackets we write h and a semicolon at the end. If we hit run now, we can see that the value of the h variable is displayed. You have maybe noticed that we wrote h inside of the brackets without the quotes. Why we did that? Well, if you add quotes here, the statement will not look for the variable with the name h, but will display the text h. To show you what I mean, let's just add quotes around the h word here, like this. And now hit run again. There you can see that now the statement does not look for a variable named h, but it just displays the word h. Like you see here, the output is h and not 30, the value of h. Now let's try out other types, but before we do that, let's revert those changes here and hit run again. And there you see 30. So let's try out other types. The next type we want to try out is float. The float can store our height, for example. So let's write float height equals 1 meter 87. So let's write 1.87. And when you write a float, the value has to have the letter f at the end. So 187f and a semicolon. The f will not be displayed. It's just for the program so that it understands that the value is a float, because there are also other decimal types we haven't learned about yet, but there are also other decimal types that are not float. So keep in mind to always write the letter f after you have written the float value. Let's now display that value as well. So we write console writeLine brackets, and now again without quotes, height. And if you hit run, now you see 30 and 1.87 without the f, like I said. Okay, so the next variable will hold our name. It will be from type string, because we have learned that strings can hold a text. So we write string, our name equals, and now there's something special about the value of a string. We know that we need a text as the value. When we assign a new text to a variable, we have to write the text in quotes. So we write quotes, Oscar, semicolon, like this. Whenever we want to write text, it has to be inside of quotes. Otherwise, the program will not display the text, but will look for a variable with that name. To show you what I mean, I will create another variable from the type string above. So let's create here above this one, string with the name Oscar, and it has the value not Oscar, semicolon. And now when I remove the quotes here, we need to display that first. So let's write console writeLine, and we want to output the value of this variable. So our name, and now let's run. It will display not Oscar. Why? Because we say our name equals the variable Oscar, or the value of the variable Oscar, and the value of the variable Oscar is not Oscar. So if we want to have this exact text inside of this variable, we need to write this text in quotes. And when we hit run now, it displays Oscar, because the value of our name here is Oscar. Okay, let's delete this one again. We don't need it. I hope that makes sense. So whenever you want to write text, it has to be inside of quotes. Otherwise, the program will not write the text, but it will write the value of the variable, for example, like you have seen here. And sometimes you don't have this variable, and then you will get an error. So yeah, you have to do it like this. And by the way, you can always assign the value of one variable to another variable. So we have this. And by the way, you can always assign the value of one variable to another variable. You saw it already with our name and the variable Oscar. So we assigned the value of the variable Oscar to our name. But let's do it again. Let's write a new variable, like maybe here. And it will be an int, new age, and it will have the value 35. And now what we can do, somewhere here, for example, we can say age equals new age. This will assign the value of new age to the variable age. And you only need to write the type of a variable once. So whenever you use a variable that you have already defined, you don't need to write the type again. So in this case, we don't need to write int again. We have to write this statement like this. And now, when you hit run, you can see that the output is 35 for the variable age, because we have said that age has the value of the variable new age. New age is 35, so age is now 35 as well. Both are the same now. Okay. And now let's try out the last type we have learned. The last type we have learned about is the bool type. Bool can either be true or false. So we write, for example, bool like otters equals true. So this means that I like otters, or that this variable is true. And now I can again display the value of this variable with console write line. Instead of the brackets, we write I like otters. And if I like otters is true, true will be displayed. And if it's false, false will be displayed. So when I hit run, true will be displayed. I can set this to false as well. Then false will be displayed. Well, that was a lot of new stuff. I guess that's enough for this lesson. I have a little homework for you that you can do. So as a little homework, you can try to find the appropriate type for a few things. Imagine you want to describe a cake shop in your code. You need a few things, like for example, the number of cakes in the store, which is 20, for example. You need a cake price, and let's say each cake costs $5.89. Then we need a name for our store, and the name of ours will be Otters Cake Shop, and the number of employees as a fourth variable, which is 5. And feel free to write variables for those things in your code. You can find the solution for this homework in the video description. try it yourself first and then look at the solution to see if you did everything right. If you have a different result than I have, feel free to leave a comment. I will try to help you. Next time, we will look at if conditions. If you like my videos, I would really appreciate a sub. It supports me a lot. So yeah, please consider to hit the sub button if you like my videos. Thank you. And if you have any feedback or questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I will try to answer all of them. So yeah, thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.